moron! Hey, moron! Dude! Look at me! I'm the waterboard, dude!
Well, good Friday morning, friends. Mark Holmes here, and Joe Boo, of course, is back at the Red Brick House holding down the fort with the funky chicken. But we got Joe Bear in the house, and as always, I want to say thank you all for watching, commenting, subscribing, and being part of the Joe Boo Sports Report. Without you guys, as well as you ladies, you know that this literally does not work. So let's get open for business and let's wake up the football gods. Do me a favor, good people. YouTube is going through and they're doing things, and what happens a lot of times is the notification bell gets unrang, and sometimes the subscribe button gets unsubscribed. So double check for me and make sure that you have hit both of those to keep up with the Dallas Cowboys with all of the drama that is them. So here we are. It's Friday, and if you are a football fan, you've got to be excited as can be. Shout out to my JMU Dukes getting their first bowl win in their second season straight with bowl games. I'm so proud of my JMU Dukes. I think about playing at JMU in the mid-'80s, in the infancy of JMU, and every time I go down Interstate 81 and I see Ball Ford Stadium and see how big that thing is, it was tiny. It was just, if you ever go to JMU, I'm going to tell you something. If you go there, you'll notice on the right side, that low side of the stadium, when I played football there, that seemed like it was so high because that was the higher side. The other side was lower than that one, and it was not closed on the hill. That was hillside where everybody, the students, of course, went and got drunk and watched games because you couldn't get alcohol in the stadium. And it's just amazing how well JMU has become a powerhouse. And I'm so proud to say, I was back there in the day, and I'm part of that lineage. And the college football playoff starts today as well, so you've got that. And we had a great game last night. We got games tomorrow. We got games Sunday. We got a game on Monday. We got 3 games on Christmas on Wednesday. We'll see how it is on Netflix. We'll see if we'll be Netflixing and chilling or watching some football or what. And then, of course, a full slate the following weekend because the football season is coming to an end. And for us, it looks like we've got 3 games left, a little over 2 weeks before it'll be the offseason, and we have a lot of questions and a lot of work. I dare say this offseason is going to be crazy and a lot busier than most because there's so many decisions that have to be made with this team. First and foremost, will McClay stay? Will McClay's contract, like the coaching staff, is up with this year too. And Will McClay would always say, I have unfinished business. And people assumed that meant Cowboys getting to a Super Bowl. But it might have been his son graduating high school. That might be the unfinished work. We don't know. Now, say what you will McClay has gotten soiled a little bit in a lot of people's eyes in recent history because they look at, Shoemaker and Mozzie Smith and things, and they say we're not drafting that well. Although I will say that Shoemaker has beginning slowly to start making a name for himself. Quietly, I know people are expecting to have Reggie White with the first round pick, but Mozzie Smith, the guy that I've believed in all along, has come along and is in the 30s as far as tackles. He is beginning to help this defense. It's part of the turning around of this defense is him beginning to start to get it. And we also have to look at the fact that Mozzie was not a Dan Quinn favorite. He didn't fit what Dan Quinn wanted to do. So they had to start over from scratch with Mozzie, this coaching staff, brand new system. And we seem to be seeing that defense coalesce. And I still caution people and say, understand this is the soft underbelly of our schedule. Be that as it may, I want to point out something that, when we watched the game last night, watching Denver, which has turned themselves around completely. But when everybody, that first year of Sean Payton there, everybody said he's then lost his touch. Denver has come a long way with a rookie quarterback being 9-6, I believe, right now. They are on the precipice of being a really good team. Some more seasoning with Bo Nix and things. You see the excitement on that team. That team has come a long ways in a very short period. And you can look at the Chargers as well. Justin Herbert, you got to say Jim Harbaugh as the coach there, as opposed to Brandon Staley and Kellen Moore, has made Justin Herbert an incredible quarterback. But I will throw in one thing in keeping it real. With the win last night for the Chargers, that's certainly their second win over a team that's over 500. They have 5 losses against teams that are over 500. They now have 2 victories. And the Denver Broncos are now 1-6 against teams with winning records. So we always hear that, well, Dak Prescott can't beat winning teams. Well, let's be real here. That's one of those things that the reason why teams have a winning record is because they win. They don't lose many games. So just trying to keep it real out there. But you see what the change of coaching has done for those teams. But I will say the change of coaching was to veteran coaches that know how to win. On the flip side, we can see teams that went to unknown coaches, unknown quantities, and you have to believe that New England is a stable franchise. At least they were with Bill Belichick, and Jared Mayo has been a complete disaster. Complete disaster. And the feel-good moment that we had for Antonio Pierce seems to be kind of waning. Now, you have to look at that and say maybe part of that is the franchise, much like the Dallas Cowboys, is a little cray-cray. So the question begs is Mike McCarthy. Is Mike McCarthy the guy for the Cowboys? And I'm going to have more of that in a moment. But here's the real conundrum for us. As I was riding home yesterday, I was had the numbers of what Rico has done the last 3 games. 392 yards in the last 3 games, number 1. 283 yards after contact. And that number is key because that means you've been hit, you've been touched. How far do you go after that? 283. That's number 1. Rushes of over 10 yards, 14. That's number 1 in the last 3 weeks. Broken tackles, I think it's 12. That's number 1. So do we believe that the Cowboys now have a stud running back? Or is it that they were playing some of the worst run-stopping teams in the NFL? I believe the Bengals are about 26. I think Carolina is 32nd, giving up 5 yards a carry. I think the Bengals give up 4.6. I think the Giants give up 4.9. So you have to look at that and say, he's doing incredible things. The yards after contact, unbelievable. But this is also against teams that were bad against the run. We'll get a better taste as we go through and we play the Eagles next weekend in Tampa Bay and Washington. If we're still getting numbers that are over 100 yards, then you have to say we got a real problem here with Rico because we know how the Cowboys feel about playing their own players, even though we believe in our own guys. Typically, they say don't pay a running back, which we kind of got burned with Zeke. You can look at it and say the Cowboys letting go DeMarco Murray after an 1,800-yard season. They didn't want to pay him. He goes to the Eagles. They pay him, and his numbers were less than half of what he had the year before. He still had a productive career in Tennessee, but you could definitely say you weren't going to get that 1,800 yards again. On Rico's case, though, here's the thing you have to look at is Rico hasn't been a 4-year starter. Rico does not have a lot of miles on him, but you have to wonder, is this a contract year where he's played really, really good? I don't have the answer for you on that. Here's what we do know. You could franchise tag him, but that's $13.4 million to franchise tag him. Franchise tag him, you got to services for 1 more year, and then you can make a decision on whether you want to get a long-term contract. You could transition tag him at about 10.1, basically what we played for Tony Pollard, and that's 10.1. So you could look at that and say, that keeps him here unless somebody decides to offer him, a deal and us compensation. Might not be the worst idea, but I honestly think that you might be able to sign him for less than $10 million. The question will be, will they? We have Micah Parsons, who seems to be the real deal, who seems to be the guy who has rejuvenated your attitude towards him. When he was injured and had one sack, a lot of people looked at it and said, and on his podcast, get rid of him. We know we heard all the ESPNs that Micah Parsons, he's just bad. Micah Parsons is just, a waste of time. I wouldn't want him on my team, and this, that, and the other after the Diggs interview where they basically trashed Dak Prescott. But then you saw the next week he kind of made up for it and saying in crunch time that Dak is in his top 5 and so on. And then he's been supporting his team and basically saying what we need to go forward, And we know in the past when great players have been drafted, how Micah has looked at it like, oh, man, I wish we had this guy and that guy and so on. And seems to be the Dallas Cowboys players' advocate to management to say, let's do this, and is being a leader by saying, listen, I don't have to get every penny. I don't have to get every penny. I want to win. And that's exactly what you want here. And things that he says he wants, Osundigizua, Rico, Mike McCarthy. So now we've got this dynamic of Micah speaking things that all of us speak every offseason, whether you listen to me or Law Nation, Jay Tuck, Game Time Brian, Primetime Phil, Big Game James, DMV, E2 Blue. All of us in the offseason look at it and say, we are headed for a train crash unless we do this. Micah Parsons is speaking the exact same thing that we do. We cannot just believe in our own guys selectively and let 9 of them go and not replace them. We can't. So this collision course of ideas, who's going to bend? Are the Cowboys going to go ahead and actually say, we're going to go in? Because we've already heard Stephen Jones, literally walking in the door and just farting. He'd been to Taco Bell and just lights up the room and just like, y'all are just, oh, God, that stinks. He's already said it's going to be really, really tough. Well, okay. You've got Micah making it saying, I'm going to make it a little easier for you. I'm going to make it a little easier for you. Let's get my contract done. And he has faith that it'll be done before next season. His 5th-year option hit is $21 million. And I'm going to pound this in your head because people will always tell, will say, you YouTubers don't know shit. You don't know shit. Stephen Jones, no, listen to me. Listen to me. I kept telling you guys all offseason that Micah Parsons, that CeeDee Lamb's 5th-year option was $18.9 million. Okay? And the Dak Prescott's cap number was 56. And I kept saying, you get those deals done, you will have more money to actually spend in free agency. And people go, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you're talking about. They can't afford to sign. I kept saying, you can't afford not to sign Dak. You can't afford not to sign CD. If you remember, going into last offseason, we were over the cap and had to make moves just to get under the cap. throughout most of the summer until CD Lamb was signed, we never had more than $8 million of cap space. We signed Dak and CD, and we've got like 21. Let me pull it up real quick here while I'm speaking on it. Over the cap is the system that I like to use. And see, the funny thing that people think, they think that people with money will spend money. And nothing could be further from the truth. People with money don't want to spend money. That's how they got money. Let me pull it up on the screen here. Let's go to going into this offseason, the Dallas Cowboys. Let's see if we can blow it up a little bit more. It won't go. Okay. Cowboys right now, as we sit here today, have $19 million. Now, 49ers got $50 million. Of course, they got to sign their quarterback. The Browns, 43. The Patriots, 38. Raiders, 34. Lions, 24. Commanders, 20. And then the Cowboys. We're in the top 10 in cap space that will roll over. So let's pull up the Dallas Cowboys. So as we sit here, understand that $19 million will roll over into next year. And as we look into 2025, we already have $22 million that's sitting there. Oh, but here was the reason why I brought this. So when we were looking at CeeDee Lamb's fifth-year option, his fifth-year option was $18.5 million. But when you go here and look at CeeDee Lamb's hit, 18.7. They saved $10 million on this year's cap by signing them. Same thing with Dak Prescott. They saved about $15 million or so off of last year's cap. So that gave you more working capital. So if we take that 19 and that 22, we've got 42 without doing anything come day one of the offseason, which is something that never happens with the Cowboys. Now, if we take that same logic in, and I know everybody's going to look at the eye-popping $89 million, which is already baked into the equation, still leaves you the 42. If we go down to Micah Parsons, you see he's $21 million of a cap hit. If we take the same thing, we go ahead and get Micah Parsons signed and save about another 10, maybe 11 million on his, that gets you to $54 million already before you even use the triggers for Dak or CD. So they can do things if they want to, like other teams do. The question will be, will they? And so back to Rico for a second here and Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy loves to throw the football. Let's be clear here. Mike McCarthy with Aaron Rodgers loves the West Coast offense of getting the ball downfield. He loves to have multiple receivers, and that's one of the reasons why I think the Cowboys will go for another receiver. Maybe, as like Michael Irvin said, go for a big receiver. I believe that that's what they'll do. Now, the problem is a lot of people say draft Austin Gentry, if he's there when we draft somewhere around 12 or 14. That may be what they do, but more than anything else, I think if you bring back Mike McCarthy, that you do like you did to Jason Garrett, and you bring in a different play caller. Because Mike McCarthy, by nature, loves to throw the football. And in games earlier this season when Rico was actually beginning to become the Rico that we've seen now and say he's doing pretty good, has had really good games, but then only gets like 10 carries or very little in the second half because we're constantly just throwing the football like crazy. And we need somebody who will understand that we do need to run the football, like Mike McCarthy said a couple years ago. I just want to run the football. And it's kind of crazy that now Kellen Moore is there with the Eagles, and he's just running the football. Kind of crazy, isn't it? So that's where I think getting a more balanced offense will help us. If you put Dak Prescott in a situation where we're getting 100 yards rushing and you put in another big wide receiver, or like now having Brandon Cooks, this offense will thrive as long as the offensive line starts playing like they've been playing. So we're not far away, as crazy as it sounds. Going into next year, having a third-place schedule is going to help as opposed to having that first-place one. Having the higher draft picks, and I believe, honestly, if you ask me, I'm going to say the Cowboys starting all over with new coaching staff, new systems, and everything for everybody to learn will hamstring us for a year or two. That's just my own personal opinion. And I look at it and I honestly say, like me, when I look at my own longevity being 59 years old, I know I've got more road behind me than I have in front of me. And that is definitely the case for Dak Prescott, where he is at the point where he's getting injuries. This is like Tony Romo. So with this team right now, you've got to be thinking about the next 2 years. The next 2 years. You need to do everything you can while you have him upright to support him and this team and follow along with Micah Parsons' concepts. So, Adam Schefter, here's where Jerry should take note. It used to be I could just close my eyes and click on YouTube and I'd hit, one of the shows talking about the Cowboys. Ain't nobody talking about the Cowboys anymore.
Behind him, Will Saints Packers Monday Night Football. Arriving on Mike McCarthy way. Meanwhile, Mike McCarthy and the Cowboys getting ready to host the Bucs. A loss Sunday means Dallas has their first losing season since 2020. They haven't had multiple losing seasons under a single head coach since going 5-11 in 3 straight seasons. New on SportsCenter, Mike McCarthy on the Bucs.
A good football team. Talented. Really like the roster. All the way through offense, defense, and special teams. I think the biggest thing that categorizing your offense, they got excellent balance. Their numbers reflect that, but you can see, like anything, it starts up front. Their ability to run the ball, both backs are excellent. I think Baker's playing some of the best football of his career. Mike Evans still playing at a very high level. So this is a big challenge. It's a team you definitely prefer to play as a division opponent, but when you play these teams, once a year or once every couple of years, it just makes your week, the week of preparation, a little more challenging.
Yeah, the Buccaneers are coming in with a 4-game win streak. As Adam Schefter back on the program, just heard from Mike McCarthy. Schefter, what are you hearing about his future in Dallas and some other coaches potentially on the hot seat?
Well, Mike McCarthy certainly has a lot of support to be kept in Dallas. You've heard Dak Prescott come out and say it. You've heard Micah Parsons come out and say it. You've heard Jerry Jones come out and say it. Now let's see how the Cowboys finish out the season. They're 6-8, third place in the NFC East. I think the Cowboys want to see something here down the stretch, some signs of life and hope. But his contract is up, and the two sides will sit down after the season. Meanwhile, the Giants have stood behind their head coach, Brian Daboll, their general manager, Joe Shane. They have said that they do not plan nor anticipate to make any moves. Of course, there's 3 games left. Giants are 2-12. They're vying with the Raiders for the top pick in the draft. And again, there'll be more discussions here as the season comes to a close. In Jacksonville, people have waited all year long to see if the Jaguars are going to make a move, and the coaching staff is intact. The front office is intact. Nothing's happened despite that they're 3-11 in third place in the AFC South. So there will be conversations there as well. Look, as a general rule, if you're picking in the top 5, your team's going to have conversations after the season, and that would also be true of the Las Vegas Raiders and Antonio Pierce. Now, just last week, the Raiders owner, Mark Davis, said that Antonio Pierce, the head coach, Tom Telesco, the GM, they're not a package deal. They each could be considered separate of one another. He certainly didn't stand behind either one at that point in time. And again, just like the Giants will be reviewed and scrutinized, the same will be true of the Raiders with their 2-12 record as they sit in the bottom of the AFC West right now.
That is a buy-in-bulk number of head coaching vacancies potentially looming across the NFL, which is a segue to our next buy-in-bulk storyline, which is Michael Penix Jr. getting the call while at Costco.
All right, we'll leave it right there. But, yeah, it's getting harder and harder to find news on the Cowboys. But I can guarantee you, as soon as the season's over, it's going to get crazy. Whether Mike McCarthy stays and goes, or who, does he get cut off at the knees and more by, him having offensive coordinator forced on him? Will Mike Zimmer come back? Will the Cowboys come March? And we got till March 15th to figure out, are we going to re-sign any of our own free agents? And we know what happened last year. We were the very last team to sign a free agent, and the person we signed was our long snapper. We cannot do another offseason like that and think that we're going to have a different result. We'll see what we got. All righty, good people, as always, I appreciate each and every one of you. And you're up to speed with the Dallas Cowboys. Peace out.